Welcome to Focus on the Candidates. I'm Cynthia Pooler, and my guest today is Brenda Short. And Brenda is running for the mayor of Minneapolis. So, Brenda, tell us a little bit about yourself, Minneapolis, and why you decided to run for mayor.
Well, I'm a small country girl, originally from Iowa. I ended up homeless in the streets of Minneapolis in the early 90s. And eventually, with the help of some of, sorry, I have a reminder. I have moved up took in training I started as a peace officer in Iowa, but I do have a background in criminal justice. But when I moved to Minneapolis, I end up the people who took me in and my family in, who helped me, I end up going to training. They said, nope, that's not the job for you. We want you to go to training. So I went to training to be a teller, and I worked at TCF Bank. Then
Mm-hmm.
I worked for Wells Fargo Mortgage and the mortgage agent. And then I end up as an investment broker at ING downtown Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
So why I started running is back in 2017, I briefly came across a wonderful lady, sweetest woman in the world. Her name was Justine Damon. Shortly after we met, she was on the news because she was shot and killed by Officer Noor.
Oh, boy.
And I watched that I watched her trial, I watched her story go silent within a week. Within a week, her story went silent. And if I needed to know anything about it, what was going on in our city, I literally talked to my friend who was a tech, and he said, Brenda, they're talking about her. They're just not talking about her in Minneapolis. I don't know why newspapers and news articles are not talking about her. So he got me a VPN. So that VPN allowed me to search her name, and I found out that her story was being silenced because our Super Bowl was coming a couple months later. As a woman, I was devastated. Not because that she was shot. I was devastated because her story was silenced. Everyone's story needs to be told, especially when you die this kind of tragedy by gun violence.
Mm-hmm.
So I was determined to change that. So I watched why her story was silenced for 6 months, just hoping that it would come up. During that time, I realized Officer Noor was not even arrested before. He was never arrested until after the Super Bowl. And that devastated me as well because any other officer would have been at least arrested and released. He did not, there was no trace of him being arrested or even tried for anything. So I watched that trial to the end. Well, it ended twice. I watched her father come all the way from Australia, where he was devastated that his daughter was gone. I watched her fiance crying on the TV, and it was just sad to me. Why I was determined to pay attention to this tragedy is because A, I knew her before she passed. B, I'm a woman, and I see how disrespectful that was to her. But C, she was a Caucasian woman, blonde hair, blue eyes, beautiful woman. I thought that was the window where Minneapolis was going to do real change and real reform in our police department, and it should have been. That was our window. But I shortly realized that our current mayor and the city council at the time decided, let's just throw money at the problem and not really resolve the issue at hand, where our police department at the time was not taking care of our community and was not supporting our community. So that started my journey into politics. A girlfriend at work said, Brenda, you might as well run for city council. That seat is out open. And I didn't even think about city council running for office even at that time. It was 3 years later when I realized it was time. Because people didn't know that 3 years later, George Floyd happened. And on top of that, I live off of Lake Street where all the buildings burned down. And I take care of my mom who's in a wheelchair. She doesn't have any legs. That unrest still haunts me today. There was nights where I could not, my mom didn't go to bed until 9 o'clock in the morning because the city was burning down at night, every night. A building, it was so bad that I had to trick my mom and tell her it was still daytime because she has the dementia. I had to trick her to say it was daytime, and I would convince her it was daytime in the middle of the night because I couldn't bear putting her back into bed and knowing that there's a building across the street, there's a building on the side of our home was burning down, and I wouldn't have the power to pick her up and put her in her wheelchair and get her out on time. So that sparked more frustration with the city because I have saw I lived through that, and our leaders, nor our governor, nor my mayor or their mayor did anything. They didn't anything. They didn't try to talk to the community. They just waited about 4 days or 5 days within and sent troops who made it worse. You made it worse. Those troops violated people's rights. People couldn't even sit on, we were told we had to be at home. People couldn't even sit on their porch and sit outside because it was summertime. They were shot with, I don't know, some kind of ball that ended up killing people. It killed a reporter. She got shot in the head and she was reporting, doing her job, reporting on the riot, and she ended up losing her life. For what? Something simple that the governor or the mayor could have said, hey, let's talk about it. Go on the TV and say, let's talk about this. I understand what happened. Let's bring this down to City Hall. I will set, I will open the doors and talk to the community and see what I can do for this to stop. They didn't do anything. They stayed silent. They stayed behind their closed doors like they do. Jacob loves making meetings behind closed doors and do absolutely nothing besides the opposite what he should do is put on his big boy pants and be a leader. So that's what I ran for mayor.
So, well, that's quite a story. So, did you ever run for office before, or is this the first time?
I ran for city council in 2021, right after George Floyd. I I what I do not like about Minneapolis election system is they tend to not tell you the truth of how to run. You could research it and it will still give you false information. Why I said that is I started to run in 2021 back in January, but every time I would call the election board or 311 where it's supposed to be trained to give you information, they was like, oh, you don't have to do anything until August. And that's not true. I learned that the hard way because people didn't know I was running until August. August is the time where you register to put your name on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
But after I put my name on the ballot in August and the election went, I ran in Ward 9. I ran against, it's so funny. I ran against 5 men in that ward, and now I'm running against five. Well, it was 4 men, and I'm like, it's always me against these men. So, 2021, I ran. So I registered so late in the election. People knew about me, but they didn't know enough about me to consider me. But I realized that Jacob, our current mayor, his campaign paid attention to me because a lot of my policies that I put out there while I was running, he ended up stealing them and
Oh,
implemented them in 2021. In 2021 after his election, because I used to, I tell everybody, I used to be a peace officer, and you notice I say peace officers and not police officers, because in our state they're peace officers. Their job is to bring peace to our community and
mm,
keep people to make safe. I told them in my campaign team about my history working in criminal justice, where we had uh, misconduct team. That misconduct team is a team of community members and two officers, random officers. If there is a misconduct that happened within our community, they decide. They come
mhm,
together, and none of them are identified. That's what we liked about it. None of them would ever be identified for safety reasons. They all watch the trial in different rooms behind glasses. Back then it was glasses because we didn't have Zoom back then. So there were just these frosted glasses in the courtroom and saw the trial, and then they made the decision. And then two officers, and to talk to the other uh people within the group who was making the decision, they talked by phone. It was like an intercom system.
mhm.
um so that people would still be safe. Community members who made the decision still was safe. There never was ever identified. um um Jacob took that idea as soon as I didn't win. He made a community-based team based on my misconduct team. So it's I realized that I got some ordinance passed in the city. They stuck, but Jacob pretended that he was going to give them the community to say so about these officers. And then I even signed up to be, and I knew. And it was really strange when you went through that in interview process to run, I mean, to be one of these community members, because I had the Zoom meeting, but their screen was black, and they would just ask the question through the by typing a note on the chat. So they were really discreet of who they selected. I never got selected. It never bothered me. But later in time, I realized a lot of the community members were not on this team, on this community-based team, don't live in Minneapolis. They own a business in Minneapolis. Well, not even a business. They own an organization, because there's two people on the misconduct team that he has, that they live in St. Paul, but they have some kind of organization, nonprofit organization building in Minneapolis. But I believe the community members should have more say, and the small businesses. Don't get me wrong, small businesses deserve it, but I know that a lot of community members who signed up for it didn't even get a chance. And that's because they knew Jacob, or Jacob knew of them, and they did not get picked.
So
But
you're saying that it's one big click.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Everything, even at city council levels. I'm knocking doors and spending time with a lot of my business owners, small business owners. And I said it in the newspaper. Many small businesses in our area, they don't believe if you are not friends or the background of that city council person, your business is not getting money. Even in my ward, I can only talk about my ward. There's another ward, but I'm gonna only talk about Ward 9, where George Floyd died. Um, my ward is represented by Jason. He is a Latino man, and previously it was represented by another Latino woman, but I think she was a lot fair to our small businesses to keep them together. But I did my research. A lot of small businesses in Ward 9, which is, I would say, Chicago Avenue down to 38th, Lake Street, and Chicago down to the river to St. Paul, is a part of Ward 9, and then north of Lake Street to Franklin. Those businesses are not thriving at all. If you're not Latino, they're not. They're not thriving. This year alone, I do my research. This year alone, the city council man approved $300,000 to buy a building and another $300,000 to remodel this building for a Latino uh, community building. So why 38th in Chicago, where George Floyd, those multiple buildings are, multiple small businesses are, they have been struggling for almost 6 years now because they're allowing community members to close that street down. They're not getting businesses like they used to. Um, More people are coming to George Floyd Square, and George Floyd Square was supposed to have $5 million to invest in this area, and the money is not being invested. The community members or the city council is investing in individuals,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of taking care of the businesses and making that area. I can only say Jason, my city councilman has only been to George Floyd probably less than 5 times. Less than 5 times. I go there almost every day because it's something that I need to be there to see and make sure that my community is okay, because my community is not okay right now. And it hasn't been okay for 5 years.
So how long has the person you're running against for mayor, how long has he been mayor?
This will be his third term. So he's had 8 years in office as mayor. Previous than that, he was a city council. He sat for a city council.
Mm-hmm.
And
So you're telling me that you think it's kind of entrenched.
yes,
Wow. So how has the community responded to your candidacy? Are they happy about it?
yes, yes. When they find out about me, I don't know if you know, I am suing. I ran under the DFL. I really didn't want to. I in the since 2021, I have been trained by Bernie Sanders team and lead different organizations outside of my state to learn how to run for office.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was going to run under the Ford Party, which is Andrew Yang, independent
Okay.
party. So they started a Ford Party here. I was set to be. I've always been a Democrat. Don't get me wrong, but I was set to run under the Ford Party.
Right.
What happened in 2024, uh, because Ms. Harris did not win her seat as presidency, they questioned me and other women about running for office. They said
You mean the Foley Party did?
the Forward Party did. Yep. So I left. There was many women. I was the only woman of color, but there was other women who was running under the Forward Party, and then they was like, "Well, we don't think." Answer this question. We have like an open chat and Zoom meetings all
Right.
the time, and we had a flood of Republicans come in with their checks to the Forward Party, and Republicans don't scare me. They don't scare me. But there was an incident where they had they said, well, this lady, Councilwoman Wansley should run for mayor. And I said, why would you? They wouldn't let her run for mayor because she's a Democratic Socialist America. So
Mhm.
that's not what the city of Minneapolis needs. We already had defund me for 5 years. So I'm arguing with new members of the Ford Party, and the people who run the party, they stayed silent. They just allowed it to happen. And I said, you know what? I'll go back to the Democrats. I don't have to fight with you to tell me what my purpose is. I know what my purpose is. I know why I'm here. So
Now, do you find from your observations that this is the way candidates are treated by the Forward Party in other localities?
I do. I do. Women are are not treated fair. And it's not even about my background, it is women. Men are there to make sure that women don't get office anymore. And I say that, and I know that for sure because there was two women running, me and Emily Koski.
Mm-hmm.
She dropped out. And there was so much scandal about why she dropped out, but I'm not going to talk about why she dropped out, or she has to talk about her own. But she literally dropped out after, and I say after the right before the city convention. So she dropped out before the city convention, and I've been kosher where I've been friendly with everyone who ran against me. But it was very, very sad, and it was very, very taught that if you wanted to run under the DFL, you had to pay to play. I knew that policy, but I chose not to live up to it. And that's why I'm suing the DFL, because I shouldn't have to pay you $10,000 DFL. $10,000 for you to consider me to be an endorsed candidate. And I said it, and I'm not taking anything back.
That's a
Everybody,
lot of money.
that is a lot of money. That's just, I don't know what the city council level was, but that's the money for mayor. And that is why I'm suing the DFL, because they slandered me, not slandered me, they blackballed me because I chose not to give my $10,000. Now, I raised my $10,000. People don't understand. I raised my $10,000 before I was on the ballot. But I told everybody, I said, hey, write me a cashier's check, hold it until my name is on the ballot. Until I secure that spot, I don't want a penny from anybody. And people was like, well, you're gonna need money for the conventions. So people, they when I needed a table or anything for war conventions, I asked community members and I said, hey, this is gonna cost me $150 for this thing, and I need that. They wrote a
Mm-hmm.
check, they send it to the DFL. See, and then there was a window where the former chair was praising people about how much money was given to the DFL. So there's 13 wards. Every ward you can have a table, a room, and something else. A table in a room, okay? And usually those tables cost, I've seen tables cost $500 at some wards. $300. The less is like 150, but the rooms always cost like about $500. So if you take, I would say roughly 13 wards, and you roughly paid $600 13 times, you gave most of that money. But there was other things that they were doing. They were having events and saying, hey, we're to put your name on this event, on this flyer, it costs you $900.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were trying to add up the money, but I had already knew back in January, because DFL said they didn't have any money, and they still say they don't have any money. They didn't even support St. Paul because they said we don't have enough money or volunteers. But
Mm-hmm.
Minneapolis, they didn't have the money either, so they thought they could swindle it out of the candidacy. So you had to have $10,000, because Emily, and I'll tell you a small thing about Emily. She um I followed her, and she did not have she didn't have $10,000 by her deadline date. She borrowed, and it's public domain. She borrowed it from her from Mayor Fry's PAC, so her name could think, and and she was only supposed to borrow it to beat me out of a endorsement. There was only two endorsements that I seeked, and it was Emily's list, but it's also women's pro women's rights here, and Black Women Lead. Those are the two organizations I seeked endorsement for at first. Black Women Lead say, okay, Brenda, we see you, but we're not saying no to you. We're just gonna wait till you closer to the ballot, and then you can apply again because we have other candidates. I never applied to anybody at that time. I was part of Emily's list um, for 3 years. I went to their fundraisers, spending hundreds of dollars at fundraisers. People knew me when I got my interview. I thought I had it, but they gave it to Emily because there was one question they asked me, how much money did I raise? I said, I'm not on a ballot, so I'm not collecting money. But that was not true. I had $10,000. I just didn't put it in my mayor account. And I did that on purpose because I wanted you to vote for me or believed in me
Mhm.
instead of you wondering how much money I have. It should never about be election should never be about how much money I raise because that money is for me to raise to support my candidacy, to knock on doors, buy flyers, buy advertising. It's not for me to tell you what I got so you can say, "Oh, we can support you."
So then what happened? You did not get the endorsement?
No, oh, the endorsement was I started suing the DFL because they started silencing me. I was physically assaulted not once but twice at two wards. At the first two wards conventions, I was physically assaulted. What was going on is Omar Fate had paid the DSA. He's not a DSA member, but he is now running as a DSA member. He paid them a lot of money. I was in that room. I was in the room in December where he paid them a lot of money to run his campaign. Um, Jacob has his own elite team. So we were hoping that nobody was going to get the endorsement. But while before the city convention, we had one tragedy where the state representatives were shot. One was killed, one was shot and injured. So they then thought they can, DFL said they don't have enough money to run. So they then said, oh, we're done with the 13 wards. Y'all raised $10,000. We need you to make more money. So they moved our city convention from a, a high school, which is free to us, to the Target Center. That is where they thought I was going to give up my money. I didn't. It cost $6,000 just to have a room. It cost $3,000 just to have a table. And that was and then they changed rules. So and because we're in a Target Center, so you can't bring in food, so it was going to cost you another $4,000 to $5,000 to bring in food to your room. So you had to pay $10,000 to Target Center, well, to the DFL. We don't know what the real numbers are. We just had to pay the DFL. So I said, I'm not going to pay anything. So I started filing challenges and I said, this is unacceptable because mayor candidates for our mayor convention, city convention, we're supposed to support small businesses. So we're supposed to invite small businesses to our city convention so they know that we will support them when we get in office. So these small businesses will be put on our flyer saying, hey, they came to the city convention, so they get more business after the city convention. That's who I had. I had a whole bunch of a small business lined up to come to the city convention, and they couldn't do anything. So because I didn't choose to buy a room, I sent a challenge and I sent it to the DFL. I said, I'm not paying $10,000 for a room for a few hours.
Mhm.
I can go on vacation, 3 vacation for $10,000.
Right.
I got the money. And then they held my challenges. I sent so many challenges from April to June that they didn't even respond. They didn't respond to them. I had to file a court case in Hennepin County. Then they responded after their attorney called me and said, "Hey, what would you want? What do you want money?" I said, "Baby, this was never about money. This is about dignity and democracy in our city. You're
Mhm.
allowing all of this scandal to come on about, and I've been writing you since April. This is June, July, almost July. And I was telling them that, and they was like, okay, what would you like to do? I said, first of all, move the city convention back from Target Center back to the high school so the whole community can be involved. Small businesses, small vendors can come and support that and sell their food, and so the community know they're here. And they said, oh, we can't do that. We canceled that contract because we had already paid for the school. They canceled the contract with the school and gave the money to Target Center. So I knew that something was wrong. Why are we paying $10,000? And 1 week before the city convention, I was knocking doors before the city convention. I came across a lady who had an Omar Fate uh, sign in her yard. I knocked on her door. It was hot, so normally I put my hair up because it was like over 100 degrees that day. I knocked,
Boy.
yeah, I knocked on her door, and I didn't even introduce myself. I said, I just want you to know Brenda Shores running for mayor. And the lady went, it's like, I'm not voting for her. Omar Fate and the DSA has it already locked out. They have made sure that there's enough DSA members in as delegates that Omar Fate will win it by a landfall. And I said, what? And I said, and I let her talk, let her tell me all this information. She didn't even know I still had a court case about the DFL and how it was being moved and all this other stuff. So I said, before I let you go, ma'am, let me tell you, my name is Brenda Short, and I am that candidate on that ballot on your flyer. She was so upset. She slammed the door, then she opened it, and then she sicked her dogs on me. Two dogs. Yep. It's in my court case. She took two dogs, and I filed a affidavit because my case was still open. I filed an affidavit saying this lady saying that Omar Fati has DSA members instead of community members. And we went to court right before the city convention. I think it was on the 14th. So I think right before the city convention. Nope, right after the city convention. So we went to my first court hearing was with them after the city convention. And I told her the same thing. The judge I knew she had read all my affidavits and what happened and all the information I had. They thought DFL was going to dismiss, DFL requested to dismiss the case, and I started sending all the information I had of how the scandal and how they kept on wanting me to raise money. And the judge said she's not going to dismiss the case. She's going to look at all my affidavits. And I was grateful. I was very, very grateful. But 2 days before the city convention, my campaign team still did not have list of delegates. And you're supposed to have all the delegate lists before at least 2 weeks before the city convention. Ask me when I got my delegate list.
The day of the convention?
8 a.m., 8:01 a.m., and the convention started at 8 that day.
Uh-huh.
And they also, before the city convention, 2 days before the city convention, they moved rules. These rules said if you didn't have a room, which mean I would have had to give them $10,000, I had to have signatures. I had to get 50 signatures by delegates and alternates. And they thought it's not gonna do. You're not. I wasn't even considered. This is what I was upset. I didn't give you $10,000, so you're gonna make it tough for me to even speak. I wasn't even allowed to speak unless I got my 50 signatures because I didn't give them the money. I had to get 50 signatures. You didn't give me the list until 8 a.m., 8:01 after the convention started, and then I get my 50 signature. I got 60. I had my team is 50 students from high school, middle school, and political science students. They ran over that. We got 60 signatures in that lot of time, and then we gave it to and then they put a new rule up and said, oh, well, we need you to find one delegate and tell her to come to the to Mike and say that she wants to hear you. So you changed all these rules for me because I choose not to give you $10,000. And that's what happened. I found one lady and I thought she wasn't gonna. There was like, before we close, anybody want to hear any other candidate? The lady came down. She ran down those stairs and said my name, and I cried. I literally cried because I went all through this DFL process, and y'all done through, because I chose not to give you the $10,000 up front. Y'all done proved, y'all made me go through this signatures and refused to let me come to. They had multiple mayor events, meet and greets before the city convention. They did not invite the black woman. They didn't invite the woman. They only supported the men because they gave up the $10,000. And now these same men don't have money to run their own campaign. That's what that they don't have the money for the flyers. They don't have anything because Jazz is making TikTok videos saying, I need money. First of all, you don't need money. You're a lawyer. Why would the community members who makes way less than you give you a penny of their money? Jazz, you're a lawyer. Lawyer make good pay, but you're a lawyer with family, so that's why you have a problem. But the DFL, they don't want any women to run in Minneapolis. I'm gonna say Minneapolis. I don't know about any other suburbs. I can only talk about my city. My city says they don't want anyone having any woman having this position.
So your election is when? This
November 4th.
November.
November 4th.
Okay. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
So I want to offer you an invitation to come
Okay.
back
Okay.
right after election day and talk about what transpired between now and election day. Would you be
Okay.
interested?
I will definitely be interested. Yeah.
Terrific. So you've been listening to Brenda Short. She's running for mayor of Minneapolis. I'm Cynthia Pooler. So Brenda, if anybody wants to contribute to your campaign or volunteer, how could they reach you?
I have a phone number. I answer my phones myself Monday through Friday, 8 to 6 p.m. After 6 p.m., it's my mental break. But my phone number, direct phone number is 612-384-5483. And you can also sign up on my website. It is my first name, Brenda, Brenda, last name Short.
Mhm.
Well, nope, that's not yeah, Brenda Short, the number 4, physical 4, and Brenda Short for MPLS. I have to write it down. I'm so used to that. So
Okay.
it's my first name, my last name, the number 4,
Mhm.
MPLS.com. And
Okay,
yep, if they Google my name, Brenda Short for mayor, it's the first website.
great. And I want to tell everybody who's listening to this, mark your calendars because on August 1st, 2026, I'm designating as National Candidate Recognition Day. Uh, J- July 4th is the 250th birthday. So on August 1st, I want to celebrate all the people that have run for office to make sure that we have come to the 250th birthday. So it's National Candidate Recognition Day. And if anybody wants to learn more about it or volunteer, can email me at localeverywhere@aol.com. So, Brenda, we'll talk in November. And thank
Okay.
you, everybody, for listening. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.